Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Hi. Um, don't mind my background. I need to fix it. I have just not been able to be bothered to do so. Um, but hi, hello, and welcome in. My name is Candice Clarinda. I go by Alice S. Rumnier on social media. I'm a rune reader, a tarot reader, an oracle reader, self-published author, certified Reiki master, certified crystal healer, and I am ordained. And today we are going to be talking about complex PTSD from surviving to thriving by Pete Walker. This is the second edition of the book. Um, and it has been very, very helpful for me. My therapist suggested that I get it, and I just finished reading it. Not yesterday, but the day before. And I figured that maybe I should kind of read some excerpts and kind of talk about the book a little bit and suggest it to people who are dealing with complex PTSD or that have a partner who is dealing with complex PTSD. So I have so much that I want to say, and so much that is just like flooding my brain right now. I am also either dealing with really bad allergies or I am sick. I am not sure which it is. So if I sound off and I'm coughing and I'm sneezing, I apologize in advance. But my therapist, I've been meeting with my therapist since October of 2024. So since I moved back to Indiana, and my therapist is amazing. I am so thankful for her, so thankful for her. But uh after watching me struggle as much as I have over the course of our therapy, and after she's had gotten a really good grasp of like who I am and what I'm dealing with, she asked me if I had read Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving. Now, I had read The Body Keeps the Score. I'd listened to the audiobook of The Body Keeps the Score. And I had read several other books that a previous therapist had suggested to me. And where those ones helped a little bit, this one is just a whole other ballgame. It really, really, really helps you understand what you're going through, why you're going through it. So I was very apprehensive to get this book and read this book. It took me many more weeks than it should have for me to actually get the book, because my therapist had suggested it probably in like January, and I kept putting it off. I kept putting it off, and I finally got it. And it took me a couple weeks to get through it because I was reading and rereading and really just trying to like cement it in my brain. But I just finally finished reading it, not yesterday, but the day before, and I have so many good things to say about it. But I figured that I would maybe read some excerpts and we could discuss it, we could talk about it. Um, so I guess this is my very long winded version of saying that we're going to read and discuss, and I'm going to continuously tell you that this is a great book and you should definitely pick up a copy if you have the means to do so. I ordered my copy via Amazon as I had a gift card, so I used an Amazon gift card to get it. I'm sure you could probably find it on Barnes and Noble. I should have definitely checked to see what other places you can get this. Let's see. Da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da. Looks like it's mostly on Amazon. However, I'm seeing a bunch of copies on eBay. And some like thrift stores. So it looks like Amazon is the primary distributor for this book. But let me just check to see if it's happens to be. Yeah, I'm not seeing it on Barnes and Noble, so it might be. Oh wait, there we go, Barnes and Noble. Okay, yeah. So it is a little bit more expensive on Barnes and Noble. I do see that. But you can get it through Barnes and Noble. So it does look like it is something that was published for Amazon and then has branched out from there. So, yeah. But yeah, it is on Barnes & Noble, and I will paste that into chat, maybe, if it'll let me. Oh no, it's not going to let me paste in chat, is it? Okay, it is not letting me paste to chat. I don't know why it's not letting me paste to chat, but it is not letting me paste to chat right now. But if anybody does want a link to that, I will be putting it in the description of the YouTube video when I upload this to YouTube. And if anybody is on Twitch and wants it, you can send me a whisper, and I will send you the link to the Barnes & Noble one. If you want that, and I'll also include the Amazon link as well. So yeah, as you can see, I'm not sponsored by this video, because if I was sponsored by this video, I would already, and or if I was more organized, I would already have these links up, and I would know all of the things. But I really feel like more people need to know about this book, and I'm really sad that I didn't know about this book sooner, because I feel like this would have helped me so much. But yeah, how about I read a little bit about this? We're gonna skip the introduction, which is, basically, a lot of Pete kind of like talking about the original book that he wrote, which is the Tao of Fully Feeling, and some other things that aren't really relevant at this moment. So we are gonna read just a little bit of excerpts from chapter 1 today. So yeah, I'm just gonna read and discuss. This is copyrighted material, so know that I am doing this not to like create an audiobook or anything, but because I feel like this is very valuable information, and I'm doing this for educational purposes, and I will be heavily suggesting that you buy a physical copy, because buying a physical copy or even an ebook, to have that and to be able to read that with your own eyes, invaluable. So obviously, there are people who are visually impaired that need the audiobook. The audiobook is going to be just as good, but there's just something about having a physical copy of something in my hands that does make it a lot easier for me when it comes to something like this. I was very glad that I did not have a physical copy of the book when I was listening to the audiobook for The Body Keeps the Score, though, because that one is really heavy, and I do feel like if I was reading along while listening to the audiobook, I probably would have had a bit of a mental breakdown. But anyway, get a copy, read it. But yeah, I'm just gonna read a little bit, and we can discuss. Chapter 1, The Journey of Recovering from CPTSD. Pete writes, I wrote this book from the perspective of somebody who has complex PTSD, and who has experienced a great reduction of symptoms over the years. I also write it from the viewpoint of someone who has discovered many silver linings in the long, windy, bumpy road of recovering from CPTSD. I have also seen this type of recovering in a number of my friends and many long-term clients. I don't think I said, but Pete Walker is not only somebody who suffers from complex PTSD, but he is also a therapist. I don't know if I said that at the beginning, but just gonna insert that in now. First, the good news about CPTSD. It is a learned set of responses and a failure to complete numerous important developmental tasks. tasks. This means that it is environmentally, not genetically caused. So CPTSD is not something that is in your DNA. It is something that you developed because of what you were exposed to. In other words, unlike most of the diagnoses it is confused with, it is neither inborn nor characteral. Hi, Inferna. Hi, baby. He's a baby. Characterological, CHARATEROLOGICAL. As such, it is learned. It is not inscribed in your DNA. It is a disorder caused by nurture, or rather lack of it, not nature. This is especially good news because what is learned can be unlearned and vice versa. What was not What was not provided by your parents can now be provided by yourself and others. Recovery from CPTSD typically has important self-help and relational components. The relational piece can come from authors, friends, partners, teachers, therapists, therapeutic groups, or any combination of these. I call this reparenting by committee. I must emphasize, however, that some survivors of CPTSD endangering families were so thoroughly betrayed by their parents that it may be a long time, if ever, before they can trust another human being enough to engage in relational healing work. When this is the case, pets, books, and online therapeutic websites can provide significant relational healing. So sorry. So throughout the book, Pete Walker will talk about this reparenting by committee, which I think is just absolutely beautiful. He'll talk about how being able to find safe spaces within friends and other people is very helpful in reparenting and being able to pull yourself up from CPTSD. Not necessarily out of, because as he will talk about later on in the book, this is a lifelong journey, and where we can quiet CPTSD and make it so that it's not so much in the forefront of our lives. There's still that like underlying chance of things popping up. So yeah, I really when he talked about when he started saying like the reparenting by committee, how you can recover through like creating these relationships, that gave me so much hope and like really helped me understand that like what I had been seeking for so long is like finding that village and like finding that ability to be able to have people who not only I can help but who can help me, like having that reciprocity of building that kind of community, that was like what I was naturally seeking. And when I was at my worst points was when I didn't have that, or I thought that I had that, but the people who I had surrounded myself with really did not have my best interest at heart, and really were not willing to reparent with me. Which luckily now I have my therapist, and I have my boyfriend, and I have, amazing friends that are willing to, be there for me, and I'm willing to be there for them, and we can kind of reparent together. So I'm very lucky with where I'm at now, but previously, there have been a lot of instances where my attempts to structure a reparenting by committee system were not fruitful. We'll say that. So we've got that. So I guess we will continue on. This book describes a I promise I know how to read. This book describes a multimodal treatment approach to CPTSD. It is oriented towards the most prevalent kind of CPTSD, the kind that comes from growing up in severely abusive and or neglectful family. In this vein, the book describes a journey of healing the damage that occurs when you suffer traumatizing abuse and abandonment. Traumatizing abuse and abandonment can occur on verbal, emotional, spiritual, and or physical levels. Moreover, sexual abuse is especially traumatizing. I believe that we have an epidemic of traumatizing families. Current estimates posit that 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 boys are sexually abused before they enter adulthood, and recent statistics from the Kim Foundation report that 26% of Americans over 18 have been diagnosed with a mental disorder. When abuse or neglect is severe enough, any one category of it can cause the child to develop CPTSD. This is true even if the case of emotional neglect is This is true even in the case of emotional neglect if both parents collude in it. As we will see in chapter 5, when abuse and neglect is multidimensional, and the yeah. When abuse and neglect is multi-dimensional, the severity of the CPTSD worsens accordingly. So again, just going over how there's many facets to CPTSD. So whether that be emotional neglect, whether that be physical abuse, whether that be a combination of those two, whether that be some sort of assault on the child, or a teen or adult, whatever. So we've got a bunch of different variables here. So then we move on to the definition of complex PTSD. CPTSD is a more severe form of post-traumatic stress disorder. It is delineated from this better-known trauma syndrome by 5 of the most common and troublesome features: emotional flashbacks, toxic shame, self-abandonment, a vicious inner critic, and social anxiety. So, if you are dealing with emotional flashbacks, which we will talk about next, um, if you are dealing with toxic shame, so you are shaming yourself in an unproductive way, there's very few times where shame is actually appropriate. Um, and when we are shaming ourselves for something, especially if it is out of our control, it is definitely toxic. Self abandonment, so putting everybody else's needs above our own, neglecting ourselves, neglecting our needs, because of how we um, felt like we needed to do as children. Um, so, we felt like we needed to worry about the people around us, their needs more, were more important. They held more weight. Um, and then vicious inner critic, somebody, uh, you know, basically the vicious inner critic is like all of the voices of the people who have hurt you in your life, turning from you are awful to I am awful. So it's the external voices becoming I am statements. And then social anxiety, pretty self explanatory. Anxiety that has to do with social situations. Emotional flashbacks are perhaps the most noticeable and characteristic feature of CPTSD. Survivors of traumatizing abandonment are extremely susceptible uh, to painful emotional flashbacks, which, unlike PTSD, do not typically have a visual component. So, this was something that I have been dealing with for as long as I can remember. Like, being upset and not understanding why I'm upset. And, like, very few times was there some sort of, like, visual flashback. So, um, there's a lot of like shame and fear and like they like all feeds into that inner critic because you're feeling some way about something because you're in this emotional flashback and it's not necessarily jiving with where you are in life right now, and you don't understand like how it was triggered, why it was triggered, what's going on. So it's very like disorienting and confusing. um, Emotional flashbacks are sudden and often prolonged regressions to the overwhelming feeling state feeling status of being an abused slash abandoned child. These feeling states can include overwhelming fear, shame, alienation, rage, grief, and depression. They also include unnecessary triggering of our flight slash fight instincts. It is important to state here that emotional flashbacks, like most things in life, are not all or none. Flashbacks can range in intensity from subtle to horrific. They can also vary in duration, ranging from moments uh, from moments to weeks on end, where they develop into what many therapists call a regression. Finally, a more clinical and extensive definition of CPTSD can be found on page 121 of Judith Herman's uh, seminal book, Trauma and Recovery. Um, so, yeah, emotional flashbacks are something that I have dealt with for, like I said, for a long time. And, um, like you hear the like the buzzword like triggered, being triggered. Oh, you're triggered. And it gets such like a negative connotation to it, and you don't really like understand what that means. Oh, hi. Hello, Pavlov. I'm so sorry. I don't know when you popped in, but I hope you're still here. Welcome in. Welcome in. Good morning. Good morning. I am so sorry. I am uh just a couple minutes ago. Okay. Yeah. So I'm talking about complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. Um and so we're gonna kind of I've been discussing and kind of reading. Uh it is copyrighted material, so obviously I want to like really lean into discussing and like, you know, uh stopping and talking about, again, discussing. Yeah. No worries. You were on a roll. The mainstream understanding of the term triggered us very, yeah, very misleading. Yeah. Because, like, it very much so, like, puts that shame on you, right? Because, like, it's very misleading because it's just like, it puts that shame like, oh, you're triggered, like, why are you triggered, so there's very much so like this shame surrounding the word. And when there's that level of shame like surrounding the word, and you don't fully understand like what's going on with you and why you are in this emotional flashback, why you are triggered, what is going on, it's very jarring and disorienting, and it makes it really really hard to like put into words what is going on with you. And again, with emotional flashbacks very rarely having any kind of visual component, where a lot of flashbacks for normal PTSD, uh, normal PTSD, I guess standard PTSD, or combat PTSD, um, which, I mean, again, not always necessarily combat, because sometimes people have PTSD that is from like a car crash or something, and that's not really combat oriented, but run of the mill PTSD, or complex PTSD. So, like, run of the mill PTSD, there's usually oftentimes like a visual component. So, like, it's not, it's very different. Like, it's like you're totally in it, and you're like, there's some visuals there. It's not just um emotional, and it's not just like, auditory. Sometimes there's like visual components as well. um exactly. When it's just a psychological response, it's a crazy feeling physically. Yeah, it's very jarring, it's very disorienting, and it's very hard to put into words. So, especially with like the social stigma around like being triggered, to be able to have this language helped me exponentially. Like, oh, it's not just like being triggered, it's a full blown emotional flashback. I am emotionally flashing back. I am in a state of being that is akin to what I was experiencing the first time that I felt this way. Um, and it's really hard for me now to think about where I was at um, prior to my uh, medically induced psychosis, which uh, was all because of like these continuous emotional flashbacks, which led to regression, which led to me going on a medication that adversely affected me, which put me into a psychosis, um, which was absolutely terrifying. 0 out of 10, would not recommend. Uh, Very, very startling, scary experience to go through. I greatly, greatly hope that I never experience anything like that ever again. Yeah, with typical PTSD, there's usually a single circumstance or scenario that causes triggers. CPTSD is often used to describe when the trauma was reoccurring or often happening, when the trauma is more complex than a singular traumatic event. Exactly. Exactly. And when it's that reoccurring, it's really hard to put a finger on, like, this is it. This is the thing that screwed me up. This is the thing that completely altered my brain and body chemistry. Um, so, yeah, it's very. It's complex. Like, it's in the name. And the fact that the DSM still doesn't acknowledge CPTSD as a legitimate diagnosis really, really, really is so infuriating and is such a disservice to people who are struggling with CPTSD. No, the DSM-5 still does not recognize CPTSD as its own diagnosis. So you either get diagnosed with PTSD, you get diagnosed with bipolar or borderline personality disorder, or some other diagnosis, because it is not, as far as I know, it is not. Yeah. Uh, yeah. So the DSM-5 does not include CPTSD as a diagnosis. Rather, the symptoms of CPTSD uh, are to some extent captured in the diagnosis of PTSD. So yeah, it either yeah, so it either yeah. Yeah, so you either get diagnosed with PTSD or you get diagnosed with some other thing according to your symptoms, which is one of the things that he explains later in the book. But he also talks a little bit about yeah, because like later in the book he talks about how apparently they're working on the DSM-6, but no release dates or content updates as of right now. Hopefully it'll be in the DSM-6, but yeah, as of the DSM-5, it's still not recognized. And that was one of the things that was talked about a lot in The Body Keeps the Score, is about how CPTSD was not recognized, and that's why there's so many people who are getting misdiagnosed with other things. So he'll also talk about, also, I love the idea of a book club via Twitch. Love the convo. Thanks. I had made a video on YouTube talking about how, like, I was recommending the book. And I had a lot of people say that they would like to see me talk more about the book. And So I figured that maybe we could just have book club here. And I could kind of, we could discuss and I could kind of like read excerpts and we could kind of like chill and vibe because I think that the more people talk about this, maybe the more chance that it will get recognized and be in the maybe the DSM-6. So I don't know, like if we can keep talking about it, fuck yeah, I'd be it. Fuck yeah, it'd be much easier for me to make book club this way. Yeah, yeah, I think that this is a lot easier and like because at first I was thinking that we would do it like on Discord, and the only problem that I had with that is that like nobody's on at the same time. Like everybody's kind of all over the place with their timing, and I don't really know when I'm gonna have time to like sit down and dedicate a couple of hours to like have this kind of interaction. Um, so I was like, why don't I just stream it on Twitch and then, anybody who wants to like watch it later can watch it later. LOL, the adult struggle of managing friend schedules, right? Right? So yeah, I figured this would be an easier like way to do this and it would make it so that um we could all kind of like join in the conversation in our own time, and we could have more conversations like in the comment sections and stuff. So I just figured like this was a way for all of us to be able to kind of like come together in our own times and be able to chat. And uh so yeah, I don't know, I think this is like I think this is gonna kind of be the thing that I do for a while. I mean, it's kind of a thick book, so I mean, this is something that we could talk about for a bit. And then he also wrote The Tao of Fully Feeling. So that's another one that I would like to get at some point. And maybe after we're done talking about this one, we could then talk about that one. Um, but yeah, like this book has just changed everything for me, and I want other people. Hi.
Hold on. This is my favorite. Hold on. Her sister was a witch, right?
Why is it not playing the sound?
Princess.
I have it up on. Why is it not playing the sound? Oh my gosh, I'm so sad. Why is it not playing the sound? Okay, well, hi, hello, welcome, Goblin. Goblin has. You hear it? Okay, why can I not hear it? Rude. Huh, I wonder if something is going on with my headphones. Maybe my headphones are broken. Goblin, you are getting written into the Happy Book of Sunshine. Goblin has subscribed for 15 months. Goblin, that's amazing. I can't believe I've been streaming for 15 months. I mean, I've taken some big breaks, so obviously, like, it's not been a continuous 15 months, but the fact that this channel has existed for 15 months is insane to me. Yeah. Is my audio good though? Like, if I'm now worried, like, if my headphones aren't working and I'm not hearing things, I'm now worried that my mic is not doing the best. Um, but thank you. You are now in the Happy Book of Sunshine again. For subscribing for 15 months. Goblin has grabbed Tywis from the rune bag. Tywis is Tyr's rune. It's all about focus and justice and making sure that you're putting that energy towards the things that you want to be putting your energy towards. I really love that for you. Pavlov has grabbed Yera from the rune bag. Yera is the year rune. It's all about success after putting in a lot of hard work. So you've been putting in the work, you've been doing all of the things, and success is going to follow. Audio seems good. Okay, good. All right, maybe, I don't know. Maybe Inferno like chewed on my headphones and I didn't realize it. I don't see any chew marks. Here, let me try this. Boop, 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 boop. I don't know. There we go. Can you guys still hear me? Is everything good still? I don't know if that did anything. I don't know. But yeah. I don't know. I don't know what's up with my sound. I didn't hear the alert and I'm really sad about that. Aw. I don't know, maybe I should try. I don't know. As long as you guys can hear me, that's really all that matters. But it just makes me sad that I can't hear the alerts. But yeah, hi. Hopefully y'all can hear me good, everything's good, and, yeah, so, as I was saying, the DSM-5 still doesn't list CPTSD as a diagnosis. So yeah, people with CPTSD often get diagnosed with regular PTSD, or they get diagnosed with something else that mimics the symptoms of CPTSD. But yeah, I am very distracted because I need to use the restroom, and I feel bad because we've only been streaming for like 50 minutes, but I'm going to be right back. I'm sorry. I was trying to wait, but I'm just going to be right back. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. I guess I don't really know why I'm putting my headphones on if I can't hear the alerts, but you guys can hear the alerts, so that's good. Yeah. So I'm back. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I like picked up a bug from work or if Goblin got me sick or if I'm dealing with allergies, but I feel off. So yeah, after the definition of complex PTSD, Pete Walker gives an example of an emotional flashback. And he writes, as I write this, I recall the first emotional flashback I was ever able to identify. Although I did not identify it until about 10 years after it occurred. At the time of the event, I was living with my first serious partner. The honeymoon phase of our relationship came to a screeching halt when she unexpectedly started yelling at me for something I no longer recall. What I do most vividly recall was how the yelling felt. It felt like a fierce a fierce hot wind. I felt like I was being blown away, like my insides were being blown out, as a flame on a candle is blown out. Later, when I first heard about auras, I flashed back to this and felt like my aura had been completely stripped from me. At the time itself, I also felt completely disoriented, unable to speak, respond, or even think. I felt terrified, shaky, and very little. Somehow, I finally managed to totter to the door and get out of the house, where I eventually slowly pulled myself together. As I said earlier, it took me 10 years to figure out that this confusing and disturbing phenomenon was an intense emotional flashback. Some years later, I came to understand the nature of this type of regression. I realized it was a flashback to the hundreds of times my mother, in full homicidal visage, blasted me with her rage into terror, shame, disassociation, and helplessness. Um, who knows? Guess it's time to mask again. Yeah. Um, so so he gives us an example, and then he says emotional flashbacks are also accompanied by intense arousal of the fight/flight instinct, along with hyperarousal of the sympathetic nervous system, the half of the nervous system that controls arousal and activation. When fear is the dominant emotion in a flashback, the person feels extremely anxious, panicky, or even suicidal. When despair predominates, a sense of profound numbness, paralysis, and depression to hide may occur. Desperation to hide, my goodness. Uh, a sense of profound numbness, paralysis, and desperation to hide may occur. A sense of feeling small, young, fragile, powerless, and helpless is also commonly experienced in an emotional flashback, and all symptoms are typically overlaid with humiliating and crushing toxic shame, which is very much so what I have felt in a lot of my emotional flashbacks is that crushing toxic shame, because I felt like, why is this happening? I should be over this by now. And Pete Walker talks a lot about changing should to want. So we're not shoulding all over ourselves. So It's not about like I should do this. It's I want to do this. So that's something that he talks about a lot throughout the book as well. So the other thing that he talks a lot about is that we're human beings, not human doings. Um, so that's another thing that was like kind of like oh yeah. Uh, so kind of a warning against like overdoing things because we're not human doings, we're human beings. Um, so yeah, toxic shame is something that I have struggled with greatly. Um, and it is like humiliating and crushing, and it gives you that sense of like worthlessness and that you don't deserve any better, and it's really 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 hard to like get out of that cycle. It's like this death spiral that is just so unbelievably hard to get out of. Um, so yeah, so after that, sorry, I am like so distractible today. Um, so after like explaining about the emotional flashbacks, Pete Walker talks about toxic shame, um, and in this section it's toxic shame, the veneer of an emotional flashback. Toxic shame, he writes, explored. Uh, so, it, so Pete Walker writes, toxic shame explored enlighteningly by John Bradshaw in Healing the Shame That Binds, obliterates a CPTSD survivor's self-esteem. So, like that sense of value, that sense of worth, it it's what attacks that. Um, with an overwhelming sense that he is loathsome, ugly, stupid, or fatally flawed. Overwhelming self disdain is typically a flashback to the way he felt when suffering the contempt and visual skewering of his traumatizing parent. Toxic shame can also be created by consistent parental neglect and rejection. Early in my career, I worked with David, a handsome, intelligent man who was a professional actor. One day, David came to see me after an unsuccessful audition. Besides himself, he burst out, "I never let on to anyone, but I know that I'm really very ugly. It is so stupid that I am trying to be an actor when I'm so painful to look at." I will never forget how shocked and disbelieving I felt at first that such a handsome person could feel ugly, but further exploration brought me understanding. David's childhood was characterized by broad spectrum abuse and neglect. He was the last and unwanted child of a large family, and his alcoholic father repeatedly attacked and looked at him with disgust. To make matters worse, his family intimidated his father. His family imitated his father and frequently humiliated him with heavy doses of contempt. His older brother's favorite gib, accompanied by a nauseated grimace, was, I can't stand the sight of you. You make me want to vomit." Um, so yeah, it's that like toxic shame that comes up and makes you feel like you're not worth it. That you are ugly, that you're disgusting, because people in your past have made you feel ugly and disgusting. He talks a lot about parents and siblings, but this could pretty much be anybody in your life. So if it's, not your parents or your siblings, maybe it's your peers, maybe it's some sort of an authority figure like a teacher, or a principal, or, just somebody that has made you feel like, I don't even want to say made you feel, like, put you in a position to feel, because I don't want to, I need to be, like, better about how I say things, because nobody can make you feel some way, but they can put you in a position to feel some way, right? So, I kind of want to work on how I say things. But, yeah, so this is all because of these people who have put you in a position to feel like you are unworthy and has created this like toxic shame within you. And Pete Walker goes on to write, toxic shame can obliterate your self-esteem in the blink of an eye. In an emotional flashback, you can regress instantly into feeling and thinking that you are worthless and contemptible as your family perceived you. When you are stranded in a flashback, toxic shame develops into the intensely painful alienation of the abandonment mélanger. A rolling morose of shame, fear, and depression. The abandonment mélanger is the fear and toxic shame that surrounds and interacts with the abandonment depression. The abandonment depression itself is the dreaded feeling of helplessness and hopelessness that afflicts traumatized children. So now we have emotional flashbacks, we have toxic shame, we have the abandonment depression, and we have the idea of the abandonment mélanger coming up. So within the first 5 pages, we have learned that being triggered is an emotional flashback. And emotional flashbacks are felt, not necessarily having any kind of visual or auditory component. We have learned that toxic shame cripples our self-esteem, which can lead to the abandonment depression and all of these things. So, like, in the first 5 pages of this book, we have already learned so much and been given so much language as to what is going on with us as people who are dealing with complex PTSD. And that is huge. Like, to have that kind of understanding in the first 5 pages of a book. And, like, the way that the book is structured is just beautiful. Like, it's so, like, the words are nice and big. There's nice breaks. There's, like, all of the sections have bold lettering, so that way you can, read what each section is about if you're trying to look for something specific when you're in the middle of an emotional flashback. I cannot express to you enough how beautifully orchestrated this book is. It is so well thought out. It is broken up into really, really, like, concise tidbits. It is so neurodivergent friendly. It is so helpful, just how it's structured. I have so many good things to say about this book. I have so many good things to say about this book, and I really, really, really wish that I had known about this book sooner. And I'm so grateful that my therapist thought to recommend this book to me, and I wish that I would have picked it up sooner. I was just very apprehensive after all of the other books that I have consumed that really didn't help all that much. I was like, okay, this is going to be another book that's going to go on the pile that is going to help me a little bit, but not really that much. Like, not enough to have spent that much time reading the book. And yet, this book, every single section, I learned something that helped me. Every single bit of this book is, like, just perfectly executed and beautifully written, and makes it so much easier to just understand what the hell is going on with you. And it's not that overly clinical, the body keeps the score style of writing where you get all of this information, but it's so sanitized that it's really, really hard to connect with. Which was my biggest critique of The Body Keeps the Score, is that I felt like I learned a lot of information, but I couldn't connect with the information that I was learning because it was just so clinical and heavily sanitized that I really only grabbed a few things from it that really made any sense or made any difference for me. And I just didn't feel like it was worth all of the hours I spent on that book. And The Body Keeps the Score is very heavy. It goes into great detail of these very horrific things that have happened to the clients of the author of the book. And it's just a lot. It's a lot. And it just feels so impersonal, where this book just feels very personal and just really helpful. But to continue on with the toxic shame, the next section, Pete writes, toxic shame also inhibits us from seeking comfort and support. In a reenactment of the childhood abandonment, we are flashing back to, we often isolate ourselves and helplessly surrender to an overwhelming feeling of humiliation. which, like, ouch, right? And when we do reach out and we are not met with compassion by the people who we thought we could trust, that's an even bigger ouch, right? Like, that just reinforces that toxic shame, you know, and it makes us feel like, well, it is all our fault, and I am to blame, and I'm just a horrible person, and that's why I can't keep people in my life, because I'm not worth it, and I'm awful, and I'm just so bad, right? So it's like this cycle of, like, this self-fulfilling prophecy that toxic shame just continues to perpetuate. It's just, whew. If you are stuck viewing yourself as worthless, defective, or despicable, you are probably in an emotional flashback, which the entire 2 years, that I was in Washington State, boy, was I in an emotional flashback. This is typically also true when you are lost in self-hate and virulent, virulent self-criticism. Immediate help for managing emotional flashbacks can be found at the beginning of chapter 8, which lists 13 practical steps for resolving flashbacks. If you skip to chapter 8, there's a list of the 13 practical steps for resolving flashbacks, which I will quickly do, and we can just kind of, like, quickly go over those. The 13 steps for managing emotional flashbacks, and I'll go more in depth when we talk about it later. But the first step is say to yourself, I am having a flashback. The second is remind yourself, I feel afraid, but I am not in danger. The third one is own your right/need to have boundaries. The fourth one is speak reassuringly to the inner child. The fifth one is deconstruct eternity thinking. 6, remind yourself that you are in an adult body, which is extremely helpful because if you are in an emotional flashback, you are likely feeling like you are a child, or, you know, you are stuck in the feeling that you were having the first time that you had that, which was likely when you were a child. Ease back into your body. Gently, ease back into your body is broken down to gently ask your body to relax, breathe deeply and slowly, slow down, find a safe place, feel the fear in your body without reacting to it. 8 is resist the inner critics drasticizing and catastrophizing, which breaks down to use thought stopping to halt the critic, and use thought substitution and thought correlation in order to replace the negative thinking. And then we have 9, which is allow yourself to grieve, which is something that most of us haven't quite been able to grasp. 10 is cultivate self-relationships and seek support. 11 is learn to identify the types of triggers that lead to the emotional flashback. 12 is figure out what you are flashing back to. So, you know, what is it that you are flashing back to? Are you flashing back to abandonment? Are you flashing back to, the abuse? Are you flashing back to unmet needs? Like, what is it that you're flashing back to? And the 13th one is be patient with the slow recovery process. So that's the overview of the 13 stops, practical steps for resolving flashbacks, which, again, I'll read more in depth when we get to chapter 8. But we're still on chapter 1. We're 6 pages in, guys. So, but that gives you kind of like an overview of what's to come for that. So then Pete Walker writes, numerous clients and respondents to my website tell me that the concept of emotional flashback brings them a great sense of relief, which it did for me. A lot of relief. They report that for the first time, they are able to make some sense of their troubled lives. A common comment has been, now I understand why all the psychological and spiritual approaches I have pursued had so few answers for me. That one hit hard for me because, like, yeah. Many also note feeling freed from a shaming list of misdiagnoses. So again, we're going back to the fact that the DSM-5 does not recognize complex PTSD as its own separate thing. You'll either be diagnosed with PTSD or you'll be misdiagnosed with something else, because they do not recognize complex PTSD as its own separate thing. This, in turn, has aided them in ridding themselves of the self-destructive habits of assuming evidence of their own defectiveness or craziness. That one hit me so hard. Many also report a quantum leap in their motivation to challenge the learned habits of self-hate and self-disgust. Which, yes. Gosh, I on, like, if you don't have this book, get this book. Get it. Get a copy. Like, if you have the means to do so, get it. Because it's so good. Like, we're going to discuss it. I'm going to keep reading excerpts. We're going to keep discussing it here. And I'll be uploading this to YouTube. You know, like, you're going to have access to the excerpts through these conversations. But nothing beats having this just, like, in your hands. You know, again, obviously, not everybody can have a physical copy. You know, not everybody, you know, has the ability to read a physical copy. You know, people are visually impaired. And I'm sure the audiobook is fantastic. I have not listened to the audiobook, but I'm sure it's better than me reading excerpts and discussing, because I got the dyslexia, and sometimes it takes me a minute to process what I'm reading. And sometimes, even then, I can't really... Doesn't work out for me very well. Which is why it took so long for me to read the thing in the first place. Like, it took so long for me to finish it. Again, I was also rereading and, like, trying to get it all to sink in. I still love listening to you read, though. Aw, thanks, Pavlov. I love you. I love you so much. Thank you for being my friend. Especially because you were my friend. Like, I mean, you're still my friend. But you were my friend when I was the most emotionally flashbacked. Like, you dealt with the most emotionally flashbacked version of Candace. And I appreciate that so much. And I am so sorry that you had to deal with that. I was there with you in those trenches. You were in there with me in the deepest of trenches. Like, the Mariana Trench ain't got nothing. Ain't got nothing. Oh boy. And like, that's what's so, like, I am so grateful for this book and this information, and I'm so glad that I have this information now. But it also is what makes me so angry and frustrated that I did not have this information before. Because had I had this book years ago, things would have been so different for me. I would not have been in just a perpetual emotional flashback, and I would not have been floundering the way that I was while I was in Washington State. Because I was floundering so hard because I did not understand what was going on with me, what was so wrong with me. I didn't have the language, even though I thought I did, even though I thought I knew. I had no fucking clue. And I'm glad that I have the information now, and I'm also just so grateful to have such a supportive partner now who has been here for me every step of the way and has been so reassuring every step of the way. Like, I cannot even tell you how amazing Mitchell is. Like, Mitchell has a tendency to open mouth and insert foot. Mitchell has a tendency to be a bit of a slob when it comes to like soda cans and stuff. He's a messy man. But the emotional intelligence and the kindness and the way that he allows me to cry, allows me to verbally ventilate, allows me to seek reassurance and be reassured, and allows me to create a space with him for him to be able to do the same thing is I can't even put it into words. I can't even put it into words. Don't be sorry. I was happy to be there for you. I'm really glad he's been so healing for you. He really is. He is an amazing man. And, you know, we all have things that we need to work on. You know, we all have things that are flaws. You know, every person does. But the way that that man just shows up every day and proves to me, no matter what what is going on, that he loves me and that he cares about me and he wants to be there for me and he wants to see me through all of this, and he believes that I can heal from all of this, and he believes that, you know, I'm going to be able to make the life that I want for myself. The way that he believes that wholeheartedly, and I can see that he believes that wholeheartedly, it's that reparenting by committee. It's that knowledge that somebody is there for you and wants to be there for you and believes in you in ways that, especially when it's your partner, you know, like especially when it's the person that you are set to spend your life with, when they're just so reaffirming, it is so valuable. Like, I'm not saying that it's not affirming to have friends. Like, obviously, having those close friendships, where, you know, the affirming is there, is just the most amazing thing. Like, I am so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for Goblin. I am so grateful for all of the amazing friends that I have. But it just hits different when it's your partner. You know what I mean? Like, it just hits different when it's the person that, you know, you are romantically involved with. It's like, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. I'm so lucky, and I'm so happy. And yeah, it's just, and it's what I needed. It's what I needed this whole time. You know, it's what I was looking for when I was in Washington State, and to have that now, it's just amazing. And I'm so grateful. But yeah, enough about me. Let's continue on, right? So we have next the list of common CPTSD symptoms. So Pete Walker writes, survivors may not experience all of these. Varying combinations are common. Factors affecting this are your 4F type and your childhood abuse / neglect pattern. So the 4Fs are fight, flight, fawn, and freeze. Commonly, people will also cite flop, but Pete Walker puts flop and freeze in the same category, which we'll talk about later on. He sees flop as the full end of the other end of the spectrum of freeze. So he sees them as 4Fs, although there will be people who will talk about there being 5Fs, which again, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or flop, is the types that you will hear about the most. Again, Pete Walker breaks that down to 4, believing that freeze is just the most extreme. That flop is the most extreme version of freeze. So it's 4Fs. So the symptoms are emotional flashbacks, tyrannical inner and or outer critic, toxic shame, self-abandonment, social anxiety, abject feelings of loneliness and abandonment, fragile self-esteem, attachment disorder, developmental arrest, relationship difficulties, radical mood vacillation, VACILLATIONS, e.g. pseudocyclomia, see chapter 12, cyclomia, CLCLOTHYMIA. Disassociation via distracting activities or mental processes, hair-triggered fight/flight response, oversensitivity to stressful situations, and suicidal ideations. So these are the most common symptoms of people with CPTSD. I have almost all of these. I have almost all of these. So yeah, that's fun. Obviously there are more symptoms. So these are not like an exclusion. This is not like this is all it is. There's a lot more. But these are the most common ones. Wait, can you read that excerpt again? I was gone for. Oh no, you're good. So the most common symptoms of CPTSD, and these are just the most common. There is obviously more symptoms, and so there's definitely things that could be outside of these symptoms. And obviously, you don't have to have all of these symptoms. Most people have at least the majority of these symptoms. But the symptoms are emotional flashbacks, tyrannical inner and or outer critic, toxic shame, self-abandonment, social anxiety, abject feelings of loneliness and abandonment, fragile self-esteem, attachment disorder, developmental arrest, relationship difficulties, radical mood vacillations, vacillations, e.g., pseudo cyclomia, see chapter 12, disassociation via distracting activities or mental processes, hair-triggered fight/flight response, oversensitivity to stressful situations, and suicidal ideation. So those are the most common symptoms. Oversensitivity to stressful situations is like the biggest, like a big one for me. LOL, I also have all, if not most of these. Yeah, like I pretty much have every single one. Like, yeah. Yeah. It's all there. It's all there. Yeah. And then like the radical mood, like I believe that was chapter 12. But I believe that was when the one that he was saying that a lot of people who have that get misdiagnosed as bipolar, which I was misdiagnosed as bipolar when I was a child. You're not supposed to even diagnose children with bipolar disorder. That's a big no-no. You're not supposed to give any kind of diagnosis like that until you are at least 18 years old. But ideally not until a person's brain is fully developed, which would be anywhere between like 21 to 25. Although with neurodivergent people, that could be closer to 30 or 35. So yeah, not the unintentional ASMR, right? Not the call out. Yeah, yeah. Definitely some unintentional ASMR there. But yeah, you're not supposed to diagnose somebody with bipolar until, at the very least, until like puberty's properly set in. Because when you're going through puberty, you are going to get the high and lows of emotionals. There's going to be a lot of emotional dysregulation. So you are not supposed to give any kind of diagnosis like that to a minor. And that was something that I was misdiagnosed with. I now know that what I was suffering from the whole time was not only just trauma, but I was suffering from PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is very, very common for uterus owners who have neurodivergence. And my initial diagnosis before I got the misdiagnosis of bipolar was ADHD. I have since gotten a proper diagnosis of ADHD, and I have gotten a proper diagnosis of PMDD. So the whole time that I was suffering from these high low lows, like the emotional dysregulation, uh, was because I was going through puberty and had a uterus, as well as well, I mean, I still have a uterus. Hopefully not for too much longer. Maybe I'll be able to get it yeeted. We'll see. Um, but yeah, because of the puberty and the ADHD. So yeah, the study that found brains stopped developing at 25 actually just stopped researching past 25. We've seen more research that actually proves the opposite, that the brain doesn't actually stop developing. Ooh, that's intriguing. That's intriguing. LOL mood. I also wish I could get mine yeeted. But yeah, regardless of whether the brain stops developing or not, like, you're not supposed to diagnose a minor with something like bipolar, um, because of puberty and the emotional dysregulation that puberty causes. Um, so those things are not things that should be diagnosed in minors, and they should only be diagnosed after. Oh, for sure, 100%. That's malpractice. Yeah, but it should be it should not be something that's diagnosed until after the body has evened out after puberty. A lot of the times, people will also end up with a second puberty, um, which is usually like in their mid to late 20s, where the body is like fluctuating again. Um, and then obviously, trans individuals end up with another puberty on top of that. So, if they decide to take hormone replacement, they end up with a third puberty, which, like, feel for you. That two puberties is hard enough. But yeah, so you're not supposed to diagnose minors with any kind of disorder like bipolar, because of the influx of hormones due to puberty, and I was misdiagnosed as a child, and I now know that I have ADHD and PMDD. So that's a fun that's a fun thing. Um, but yeah. Um, and there is going to be some information in here about how some people who are diagnosed with ADHD don't actually have ADHD, that it is CPTSD. So there are people who are running around with ADHD diagnoses, who are misdiagnosed, and what they really have is CPTSD. Obviously, you can have CPTSD, ADHD, autism, PMDD. You could have the whole slew of things. However, there's also a chance of being misdiagnosed as neurodivergent when you have CPTSD, which is something that he talks about later on in the book. um, So, yeah. I guess we will continue on because we're only on page 7. um, so next he talks about suicidal. Oh, and after the suicidal ideations, he'll talk about misdiagnosis. Um, so it's not even that much later on in the book. um, so yeah, so next he talks about suicidal ideation. Suicidal ideation is a common phenomena in CPTSD, particularly during intense or prolonged flashbacks. Suicidal ideation is depressed thinking or fantasizing about wanting to die. It can range from active suicidality to passive suicidality. Passive suicidality is far more common with CPTSD survivors who I have known, and it ranges from wishing you were dead to fantasizing about ways to end your life. When lost in suicidal ideation, the survivor may pray to be delivered from this life or fantasize about being taken by some uh, calamitous act of fate. Calamitous act of fate. Woo! He may even think or obsess without being serious or stepping. He may even think or obsess without being serious of stepping in front of a car or jumping off of a bridge. And one of the things that you'll see a lot in this book is that Pete Walker will fluctuate between she, her, and he, him pronouns. He doesn't use any they, them pronouns, but he does use she, her, or they, them pronouns to, like, throughout the book to kind of emphasize that this is for everybody. So you'll see like just as many he, him pronouns as you will she, her pronouns. Again, no they, them pronouns. But this was first published in 2014. So that was, before they, them pronouns were like widely used. So yeah. Fantasies typically end, however, without a serious intent to kill oneself. This is as opposed to active suicidality, where the person is actively proceeding in the direction of taking her life. I am discussing passive suicidality because it does not merit the same kind of alarm as active suicidality. Passive suicidality is typically a flashback in early childhood when our abandonment was so profound that it was natural for us to wish that God or somebody or something would just put it all to an end. When the survivor catches himself in a suicidal reverie, he will benefit from seeing it both as an emblem of how much pain he is in and as a sign of particularly intense flashback. This then can direct him to use the flashback management steps in Chapter 8, which I read earlier. If, however, flashback management does not help and suicidality becomes increasingly active, please call the National Suicide Hotline 1-800-273-8255 or visit www.suicidepreventionlifeline.org because this is a flashback that you may need help managing, and you will get good help there. Skilled therapists and caregivers learn to discriminate between active and passive suicidal ideation and do not panic and catastrophize when encountering the latter. Instead, the counselor invites the survivor to explore his suicidal thoughts and feelings, knowing that in most cases, verbal ventilation of the flashback pain underneath it will deconstruct the suicidality. In the much less common scenario of active suicidality, encouraging verbal ventilation will help the therapist or helper discern if there is indeed a real risk if actions if action needs to be taken to protect the survivor. So again, this is kind of this is just talking about like how this is very, very common, which is also something that I think that a lot of people who do have those kind of ideations, there's a lot of shame about having those ideations. I know that I have felt shame over having those ideations. And when I was in my psychosis, my brain very much so uh, felt like there was no other options than the two that it placed before me. So as somebody who has been there's a lot of shame. And so that it's like all of these things that compound when you're dealing with like the internal critic and um, you know, just dealing with all of it. It's very difficult to just like take in and to deal with, because I know personally I had a lot of thoughts about it, but it wasn't until it wasn't until I was in my psychosis that it became an active ideation for me. Because up until that point, it was very much so like begging the gods to take me. And just begging Freya to like help me and figure this out. Like Freya, just take me. Like, send me to Sasrumir. Let's be done with this. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of like it's a very hard thing to deal with, because like there's that shame, and then there's also just like anger and frustration about having the feelings in the first place, and like the fact that you're dealing it's just it's a lot. And like I said, until I was actually like in a psychosis, it was a lot more about thought than action. Like I had never even like self-harmed until I ended up in a psychosis. Like, not once had I like physically self-harmed myself until I was in a psychosis. And that is the that's a lot. It's a lot, like, to go, you know, over 30 years of your life being very passive, and then to end up in a psychosis and think that you have no other options. I don't recommend. It's a scary thing. Yeah. It's trauma. Oof. Like, it's it's a very traumatic situation. Like, just feeling like you have no other options and you're in such a insane state of being. Like, I don't even want to say insane, because I feel like that just kind of isn't the correct verbiage, because it's really just, psychosis is such a hard thing to put into words. And when you're dealing with a psychosis because of medication that you are taking, that your doctor has prescribed to you, that you trust that your doctor has the best interest, your best interest at heart, and that this is going to be something that's going to help you, and then it does the exact opposite, is just terrifying. It's so scary, because this medication, it's supposed to help you. It's supposed to make you better. And then it does the exact opposite, and that is so scary, and it's made it so hard for me moving forward to even up the dosage of medication that I have now. Like, it was so hard for me to go on medication again after that, because it's just so scary that the thing that's supposed to help you get better or feel better and function, more efficiently, just doesn't. It's I would not wish that on anybody. Like, I mean, you know what, scratch that. I would wish that on child predators. Like, that's the only people that I would wish that on, is just people who hurt people like that. Getting heavy up in here. Yeah. Thank you for being here, by the way. Just thank you for being here, for discussing this with me. You know, I appreciate it a lot. It's all a lot. But if we don't talk about it, then how's this information supposed to get out? Like, if we don't talk about the experiences that we have, then people just feel alone, and they feel like, they're the only ones who have ever dealt with this, because nobody else is talking about it. And then the shame continues, and the inner critic wins, and it's this vicious cycle. Like, it's this vicious cycle. Of course, I'm using it as a body doubling thing. I gotta make a lesson for the kid I'm tutoring later today. Oh, nice! Well, thank you for body doubling with me. Oof. So, yeah, next we're going to talk about what you may have been diagnosed with. So this is talking about the misdiagnoses. Misdiagnoses. Thank you for reading. You're welcome. We're only 8 pages in. We're 2 hours into this, but we're only 8 pages in. And there's already just been there's so much good information. It's hard not to it's so good. Get this book. Get it. So Pete Walker writes, I once heard renowned trauma traumatologist John Beer quip that if CPTSD were ever given its due, the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorder, used by all mental health professionals, would shrink from its dictionary like size to the size of a thin pamphlet. In other words, the role of traumatized childhoods in most adult psychological disorders is innumerous. I have witnessed many clients with CPTSD diagnosed with various anxiety and depressive disorders. Moreover, many are also unfairly and inaccurately labeled with bipolar, narcissistic, codependent, autism spectrum, and borderline disorders. This is not to say that CPTSD does not sometimes co occur with these disorders. Further confusion also arises in the case of ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, as well as obsessive compulsive disorder, both of which are sometimes more accurately described as fixated flight responses to trauma. See the 4F below. This is also true of ADD, attention deficit disorder, and some depressive and dissociative disorders, which similarly can more accurately be described as fixated freeze responses to trauma. Furthermore, this is not to say that those so misdiagnosed do not have issues that are similar and correlative with the disorders above. The key point is that these labels are incomplete and unnecessary shaming descriptions of what the survivor is actually afflicted with. Reducing CPTSD to panic disorder is like calling food allergies chronically itchy eyes. Over focusing treatment on the symptoms of panic in the former case and eye health in the latter does little to get at root causes. Feelings of panic or itchiness in the eyes can be masked with medication, but all the associated problems that cause these symptoms will remain untreated. So I know that, like, I got diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and depression. And it's like, yeah, you know, you get those, you get these, like, laundry lists of labels that kind of, like, undermine what's really going on. Moreover, most of the diagnoses mentioned above are typically treated as innate characterological defects rather than as learned maladaptions to stress. Adaptions that survivors were forced to learn as traumatized children. And most importantly, because these adaptions were learned, they can often be extinguished or significantly diminished and replaced with more functional adaptations to stress. So he's talking about how, like, because these are not something that's, like, biological, it's in our DNA, it's not something that's, like, an actual disorder necessarily, as, like, obvious. I mean, it's a disorder, but it's a misdiagnosed disorder. Because of these misdiagnoses, instead of, like, really getting to the root cause and, like, doing the reparenting by committee and learning better coping skills and learning all of these things that are going to better serve you, you just basically get masked with medication or, you know, kind of, like, just invalidated, and it just makes things more exasperated. Exacerbated. It makes things worse. In this vein, I believe that many substance and process addictions also begin as misguided maladaptions to parental abuse and abandonment. They are early adaptions that are attempts to soothe and distract from the mental, emotional, and physical pain of CPTSD. So when he's talking about like addictions and substance and process addictions, he's talking about addictions to substances like drugs, but also food addictions. So whether that be like overeating or undereating, some sort of eating disordered or disordered eating, is kind of where he's getting at with that, which is something that he'll talk about later on. And then we have next the origins of CPTSD. And again, like we're only like the page that I just read was page 9. We're only at the top of page 10. Okay, we're 2 hours into this, and we're only at the top of page 10. And like the amount of information is just staggering. Like it's so vital and so helpful and so necessary. And it's all stuff that we just normally don't get. But that's how, we're processing it all. Yeah. Yeah, like this is all stuff in these first 10 pages that I should have learned years ago. This is all stuff that should have been things that I could have, learned about and understood years ago, and would have helped with shrinking the inner critic and helped me feel like I wasn't inherently this like awful, disgusting, flawed being. I mean, obviously those thoughts are still going to show up. Obviously, like there's still going to be that like underlying feeling. But this would have helped me contextualize and comprehend why I was feeling the feelings that I was feeling, and why I was thinking the things that I was thinking, and helped me understand that I was in emotional flashback after emotional flashback after emotional flashback after emotional flashback with very little to no breaks in between. Like I said, the full 2 years that I was in Washington State, it was just one flashback after another after another after another. And since I've moved back to Indiana, there have been emotional flashbacks with like little breaks in between. And having this information years ago would have changed everything for me. But I have it now. I have the information now, which is nice. But also, again, angering and frustrating, because the way that I could have significantly increased my quality of life before now, that's woo. All right. So next we have the origins of CPTSD, where Pete Walker writes, how do traumatically abused and or abandoned children develop CPTSD? While the origin of CPTSD is most often associated with extended periods of physical and or sexual abuse in childhood, many observations convince me that ongoing verbal and emotional abuse also causes it. Many dysfunctional parents react contemptuously to a baby or toddler's plaintive call for connection and attachment. Contempt is extremely traumatizing to a child, and at best, extremely noxious to an adult. Contempt is a toxic cocktail of verbal and emotional abuse, a deadly amalgamation of de- denigration? 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 Denigration. There we go. Amalgamation of denigration, rage, and disgust. Rage creates fear, and disgust creates shame in the child in a way that soon teaches her to refrain from crying out, from ever asking for attention. Before long, the child gives up on seeking any kind of help or connection at all. The child's bid for bonding and acceptance is thwarted, and she is left to suffer in the frightened despair of abandonment. Particularly abusive parents deepen the abandonment trauma by linking corporal punishment with contempt. Slaveholders typically use contempt and scorn to destroy their victims' self esteem. Slaves and children who are made to feel worthless and powerless devolve into learned helplessness and can be controlled with far less energy and attention. Cult leaders also use contempt to shrink their followers into absolute submission after luring them in with brief phases of fake unconditional love. So in this he has two examples historically of how this plays out. So he's talking about enslavement, which was typically either indentured servitude or chattel slavery, where the slave owner would break the spirit of the person who was enslaved. Obviously, with indentured servitude, there's also this like underlying sense of hope, because indentured servitude was supposed to be like a specific snapshot of time. So like I'm going to move to America and I'm going to become an indentured servant so that this rich person in America will pay for my being able to move to America, and in exchange for that I will be this person's servant for 4 years to pay off that debt, right? So that's like that underlying sense of hope. And we know historically that the people who were indentured servants, the person who they were indebted to would do everything they could to penalize them, to lengthen that stay. So if you were supposed to be their slave for 4 years, they would find some sort of thing that you did wrong, or some sort of grave injustice that you performed as not being a good enough slave to like add add a year, 2 year, 5 years, whatever, to that time. And then obviously, when you have the more extreme form of slavery, there's not even that like sense of hope, because you just kind of like you're born into slavery, and that's the way it is, and or you were sold into slavery and then that's the way it is. So it's just like that dehumanization of that like keeps people feeling worthless and powerless, and like there's not really a way to get out of those circumstances, um, which is why it was so hard for um, slaves to like be liberated, because there were um, so many slaves that felt like they couldn't be free, and so it shouldn't have taken as long as it did. It shouldn't have happened in the first place. It's absolutely disgusting. But it does all go back to CPTSD. This breaking of a person's uh, sense of self. They're like punished for just being. And then again, we've got this other example of cult followers. Hi, Mirror Stepper, welcome in. Thank you so much for being here. So then we've got this other example of cult leaders who use like contempt to shrink their followers into submission. So like, so we've got these other instances where CPTSD is like they're using these tactics to create people with CPTSD in order to have this upper hand and have control of these people. So using shame, using punishment, using contempt, using all of these things to traumatize people. And again, we didn't have the word CPTSD, we didn't have the understanding of CPTSD, but they're literally like creating CPTSD in these people in order to have control of them. And so that there's a lot. There's so, like, it's so damaging. Like, I'm laughing, but it's that uncomfortable laugh of like, there's so much that, like, just, it's so cruel and it's so wrong and it's so evil that these authority figures in our lives, in the lives of these people, they create this abuse in order to, like, they do these abusive things in order to create these broken individuals that will be complicit to the abuse, whether that be verbal abuse, whether that be physical abuse, whether that be emotional abuse, whatever the abuse is. It's so wild to me that, like, it's the abuse is like put under this banner of like parenting or like training or like devotion, and it's not parenting, it's not training, it's not devotion. It is completely attacking individualization, is completely attacking a person's ability to live a good life, and it completely goes against the Constitution of the United States. Completely. Because our whole Constitution, you know, whether, I mean, obviously, like, the founding fathers were a bunch of fucking hypocrites, you know, considering that the majority of them were slave owners, and you know they could have they could have done so much to make sure that the rights of women were secured. Abigail Adams famously wrote to her husband, begging him to remember the ladies in this new legislation. Um, and yet our whole Declaration of Independence, our whole Constitution, it's all founded on the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And being somebody who is abusing somebody to the point of complex PTSD is literally taking that person's autonomy away from them, taking away their ability to have the life that they wanted, to be able to live free, to be able to find happiness. Like, it's so disgusting to me that we're literally, and the world that we're living in today, the world that we're living in today, just like further, you know, the fact that they're going after trans people, they're going after immigrants, and they don't care like what the status of those immigrants are. Like, they're literally like going and rounding up immigrants that are going to their immigration hearings. They're rounding up citizens. Like, it's all just so against what we as a country should be. And it's creating more trauma. It's creating more of this abandonment, mélange. It's creating more of this just this disgusting, like, this disgusting set of circumstances that should not be happening at all. And I do like that Pete Walker gives these two examples, because that's what we're dealing with, like, right now, you know? Like, that's what we've historically been dealing with, is fighting against these people who are just tyrants. Anyway, we'll keep going on, right? We'll keep moving along in this first chapter. Yeah, we've got so much further to go. So yeah, we're I think what we'll do is we'll finish the first chapter, and then I'll see how we're feeling after that, and then we might do the second chapter at a later date. I don't know, but I got a lot of emotions right now. Anyway, so we've got Pete Walker then goes on to write, furthermore, CPTSD can also be caused by emotional neglect alone. This key theme is explored at length in chapter 5. If you notice that you are berating yourself because your trauma seems insignificant compared to others, please skip ahead to this chapter and resume reading here upon completion. this was always something that was like super big for me, is that I would compare my trauma to other people's trauma and be like, well, it's not as bad as this person, so I'm invalid. Because other people in my life had told me that you're being a drama queen, you're overreacting, it's not what you think it is, it's not as bad as you think it is, this person has it so much worse, so you need to just get over it. It's not that bad. So like when you have people undermining what you've been through, um, it really makes it hard for you to not berate yourself, like you end up in this cycle of like berating yourself. And again, this is something that'll come up again in chapter 5. And we'll continue. Pete Walker writes, emotional neglect also typically underlies most traumatization that are more glaringly evident. Parents who routinely ignore or turn their backs on a child's call for attention, connection, or help abandon their child to manageable amounts of fear. Unmanageable. Parents who routinely ignore or turn their backs on a child's calls for attention, connection, or help abandon their child to unmanageable amounts of fear, and the child eventually gives up and succumbs to depressed, death-like feelings of helplessness and hopelessness. These types of rejection simultaneously magnify the child's fear and eventually add a coating of shame to it. Over time, this fear and shame begets a toxic inner critic that holds the child and later the adult totally responsible for his parents' abandonment until he becomes his own worst enemy and descends into the bowels of CPTSD. Which, like, holy fuck, is this so fucking insidious? Like, CPTSD is so fucking insidious because it's not, like, the people who give you the CPTSD, like, they're completely off the fucking hook. They're completely off the fucking hook. Because eventually you will get to a point where you feel like you're the problem and it's all your fault. And you are just this awful human being. And no wonder, your parents didn't believe in you, or your teachers didn't believe in you, or whatever other authority figure didn't believe in you, or, no wonder they weren't there for you because X, Y, and Z. Like, you'll find some way to blame yourself for your own trauma. Like, how disgusting is that? Like, and obviously, that's what I was doing. I was blaming myself for staying in abuse. I was blaming myself for having been in abuse in the first place. I was blaming myself for every little thing that was going on. And even when I tried to put the blame where it was supposed to go, it was never an onus. It was never like, yes, this is the person that is meant to shoulder the burden of this blame. I would very much so be like, yeah, this is all their fault. But in my brain, I was also like, but it's my fault for allowing this to continue. It's my fault for not standing up to them. It's my fault for, being complicit in my own abuse. So it's that, like, very insidious, even when you put the onus on somebody else, that inner critic is like, no, you're It takes two to tango. You're the reason that you're still dealing with this. It's your fault. You should have done this. You should have done that. You should have, you know, uh, left when things were unreasonable. You knew things were unreasonable, and yet you stayed. You knew that you were being taken advantage of, and yet you stayed. This is your fault. Like, it's so insidious that that's how it goes, Like, it. Anyway, more about trauma. So, Pete Walker then writes, trauma occurs when attack or abandonment triggers a fight/flight response so intensely that the person cannot turn it off once the threat is over. He becomes stuck in an adrenalized state. His sympathetic nervous system is locked on, so it's locked on, and he cannot toggle into the relaxation function of the parasympathetic nervous system. So you're just like constantly on fight or flight, just constantly. Like, that on switch is on, you can't shut it off. One common instance of this occurrence when a child is attacked and hurt by a bully after school. He may remain in a hypervigilant, fearful state until someone takes action to ensure him that he will not be re-victimized, and until someone helps him release the hyperactivation in his nervous system. If the child has learned through experience that he can come to at least one of his parents when he is hurting, frightened, or needing help, he will tell mom or dad about it. With them, he will grieve the temporary death of his sense of safety, and in the words, temporary death of his sense of safety in the world by verbally ventilating, crying, and angering about it. Chapter 11 expands on this process of grieving. Moreover, his parent will report the bully and take steps to assure that it will not happen again, and the child will typically be released from the trauma. He will naturally relax back into the safety of parasympathetic nervous system functioning. Simple. One incident traumas can often be resolved relatively easily if CPTSD is not already present. So, like, the simple thing is that, like, this bullying experience is super easy to resolve if CPTSD is not already present. If, however, the bullying happens on numerous occasions and the child does not seek help, or if the child lives in an environment so dangerous that the parent is powerless to ensure a modicum of safety, it may take more than parental comforting to release the trauma. If the trauma is not too continuous over too long a time, a short course of therapy may be all that is needed to resolve the trauma, provided, of course, the danger in the environment can effectively be remediated. So, again, like, if somebody's being bullied in school and CPTSD hasn't already set in, and you can verbally ventilate, so you can tell your parents what is going on, and the parents can have it stopped, and the bullying does in fact stop, then it's a lot easier for that child to get out of fight or flight and to feel safe and to feel like they can go to school without that fear of the bullying coming back. When the trauma, however, is repetitive and ongoing and no help is available, the child may become so frozen in trauma that the symptoms of simple PTSD begin to set in. This can also occur during the prolonged trauma of combat or entrapment in a cult or domestic violence situation. If, however, a person is also afflicted by ongoing family abuse or prolonged emotional abandonment, the trauma will manifest as a particularly severe emotional flashback because he already has CPTSD. This is particularly true when his parent is also the bully. So it's that compounding. Gonna quickly. I'm gonna be right back. I need to blow my nose real quick. Yeah. So it's that compounding factor, right? So if it's one instance where, a child is being bullied and, it's taken care of right away, then the child can feel safe again. But if the bullying continues, um, then that child can end up with CPTSD. So this is taking it from like off the shoulders of um, the parents and on the shoulders of the peers at this point. So even if you have a good relationship with your parents, and your parents aren't the one that caused the CPTSD, um, this is an example of if the parents are powerless to do anything to stop the bullying. This is an example of where peers can be the thing that causes the CPTSD because the child has no way of getting away from that situation, and their parasympathetic nervous system is just non-existent because it's just one thing after another after another after another. So not only are children with parents that are um, abusive, and then of course if your parents are also, you know, causing you trauma, then it's even deeper than that, right? So it's those different layers. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be your parents that cause the CPTSD. It could be your peers. It could be, people that are authority figures. Like there's a bunch of different um, options about like how the CPTSD can occur. Um, but it's the fact that it's a prolonged experience that um, does not get properly resolved, um, and therefore the child feels unsafe, um, or even the adult feels unsafe, um, and CPTSD uh, sets in. So um, it's definitely interesting how even if you have the right parents, um, the correct parents that hear you and see you and are there for you, and and want to support you, even if you have that, um, you could still end up with CPTSD because of your peers. You could still end up with CPTSD because of teachers. You could still end up with CPTSD because other people who are supposed to be protecting you failed to protect you when your parents couldn't protect you. Um, so yeah, there's so many layers here. It's why it's complex, right? Um, so yeah, and of course it's a lot more common for CPTSD to start in childhood, uh, because once you get older, once you're like more in your adult sphere of things, um, if you have been lucky enough to have good enough parents, and good enough teachers, and good enough peers, and good enough other authority figures in your life, if you've been lucky enough to have good enough of all of those things, then you will have been able to develop a healthy ego, and then the likelihood of developing CPTSD, significantly, like in your older years, significantly decreases, because you've already been supported, and you've already um, been able to know what is uh, positive for you and what is not conducive for you, and you will be more likely to walk away from situations that are not conducive to you. So it's all of these layers, right? There's so many layers, all of the layers. It's like an onion, right? It's got layers. So, now at the bottom of page 12, we're going to talk about the 4 F's, which is fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And this is where Pete Walker writes, earlier I mentioned the fight-flight response that is an innate automatic response to danger in all human beings. A more complete and accurate description of this instinct is the fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. So flight/flight/freeze/fawn response. The complex nervous system wiring of these responses allows a person in danger to react in 4 different ways. 4 different ways. A fight response is triggered when a person suddenly responds aggressively to something threatening. A flight response is triggered when a person responds to a perceived threat by fleeing, or symbolically by launching into hyperactivity. A freeze response is triggered when a person, realizing resistance is futile, gives up, numbs out into dissociation, and or collapses as if accepting the inevitability of being hurt. So that collapsing is where the 5th F that some people will talk about comes from, which is flop. As we see, as we just read here, Pete Walker describes this as being the like final boss of the freeze response. A fawn response is triggered when a person responds to threat by trying to be pleasing or helpful in order to appease and forestall an attacker. This fourfold response potentially will heretofore be referred to as the 4Fs. Traumatized children often over-gravitate to one of these four response patterns to survive. And as time passes, these four modes become elaborated into entrenched defensive structures. There we go. That are similar to narcissistic fight, obsessive compulsive flight, dissociative freeze, or codependent fawn responses. These structures help children survive their horrific childhoods, but leave them very limited and narrow in how they respond to life. Even worse, they remain locked in these patterns in adulthood when they no longer need to rely so heavily on one primary response pattern. It is important to understand that variances in the childhood abuse/neglect pattern, birth order, and genetic predispositions result in people polarizing to their particular 4F type. In the next section, we will explore examples of how children are driven into these defenses by traumatizing parents. The four children in the vignette below match the four basic types of trauma survivors. Bob, fight, narcissistic. Carol, flight, obsessive compulsive. Maud, freeze, dissociative. Sean, fawn, codependent. The 4Fs in CPTSD, including family. So we're talking about how, like, being the oldest or being the middle child or being the youngest or having, like, certain genetic predispositions, all of these different things can have you gravitating towards one 4F type or another, which is just a very intriguing thing that, depending on birth order, depending on different situations, will depend on what your 4F type might be. And a lot of the times, people will gravitate to either one 4F type in particular or two 4F types that they will have in particular. And so, yeah. But we're gonna keep on going on with this one. So, this bang is driving me nuts. All right. The 4F in a CPTSD-inducing family. So this is an example of four people that are siblings in one family, and how their 4F type emerged depending on their birth order and all of these other things, right? So Pete Walker writes, Carol was the scapegoat of her family. Narcissistic and borderline parents typically choose at least one child to be the designated family scapegoat. Now, one child might be the designated family scapegoat. However, the scapegoat can change. So, even if somebody is not the scapegoat to start out with, there could be something that changes in the family dynamic to then make that person a scapegoat later. But in this family, Carol was very much so cemented as the scapegoat. Scapegoating is the process by which a bully offloads and externalizes his pain, stress, and frustration by attacking a less powerful person. Typically, scapegoating brings the bully some momentary relief. It does not, however, effectively metabolize or release his pain, and scapegoating soon resumes as the bully's internal discomfort resurfaces. So somebody will like somebody who is in this position of power will unload all of um their pain and their stress and their frustration and blame it all on the scapegoat. Uh, and then when that doesn't, when that inevitably doesn't help, then it resurfaces and they, go back to this cycle of dumping on this scapegoat. Again, like I said before, the scapegoat can change. If the family dynamic changes in any way, the scapegoat can change. But in this one, Carol is the family scapegoat, very, very heavily cemented into the family scapegoat position. Wilhelm Reich, in his brilliant book, The Psychology of Fascism, fascism, there we go, explains how scapegoating occurs on a continuum that stretches from the persecution of the targeted child by a bullying parent to the horrific scapegoating of the Jews by the Nazis. So it's that continuum of we're going to scapegoat this child all the way to we are going to scapegoat a particular group of people. In this case, it's the Nazis scapegoating the Jews. Modern times, the American government scapegoating trans people and immigrants. So we've got this horrific continuum of targeting a singular child all the way to targeting an entire group of people. In especially dysfunctional families like Carol's, the scapegoating parent often organizes the rest of the family into ganging up on the scapegoat. So, like the Nazis were ganging up on the Jews and like doubling down. And of course, they didn't start out with the Jews, they started out with queer people. They started out with, well, first they started out with just disabled people. Then they moved to queer people. Then they moved to the Jews. So even though their target all along might have been the Jews, they had to start with something that was more acceptable to be scapegoating, which again, like I said, as the family dynamic changes, as dynamics in society changes, the scapegoat can change. So it starts out with scapegoating disabled people because this is something that they can say is a blight on society. They're useless eaters. They're taking up all of this space and they're not doing anything to give back to the community, right? Okay, that was the Nazi ideology, and they absolutely use the term useless eaters, which is disgusting. Um, and then as time went on, they were like, okay, who can we target next? What's our new scapegoat? How do we gain more traction? How do we gain more ground? Okay, next we're going to go after these trans people, these queer people. In Germany, they had the most they had the most research being done on gender reassignment surgeries, on gender just gender affirming like just gender affirmation in general. So like whether that be socially transitioning and changing your name and changing your clothing, or taking hormones, or gender reassignment surgery, all of these things, like these were all things that were going on very heavily in Germany at that time. So there was this big group of scientists that were studying these gendered studies, studying queer people, whether that be trans, bisexual, homosexual. They were studying people, and they were gathering up all of this data. And when you see the book burning, the pictures of the Nazis doing book burnings, that's all of the gender studies that they burned. All of the books that you're seeing in those like famous Nazi book burning pictures, that was all queer studies. That was all about the information that they had gathered about queer people. And then ultimately, they then scapegoated the Jews after that, because they had already been able to go after the undesirables, and now they could make the Jewish people the undesirables, and flip the scapegoat on them. So yeah, that's long-winded, but we're gonna keep going. So then Pete Walker writes, Carol discovered a great deal about her early childhood from watching home videos. I did too. Oh boy, did I learn a whole lot by watching some home videos. Um, I don't want to say anything negative about my parents. I don't want to say anything that could potentially upset anyone. But it is interesting what you can learn by watching home videos and seeing the dynamic of what your parent thought was not harmful, and how, looking back on that, you can kind of be like, oh, that actually kind of stings to see that. But again, I'm not gonna say anything negative about my parents, and I'm not going to describe what exactly I am talking about. But yeah, we'll continue. Her parents were so narcissistically oblivious that they unabashedly recorded many incidents of Carol being verbally and emotionally abused by them. This was unusually this was usually in the background of recordings of the performances of their favorite child, her older brother. Severely narcissistic parents are rarely embarrassed by their aggressive behavior. They feel entitled to punishing a child for anything that displeases them, no matter how unreasonable it might appear in an impartial observer. So the fact that it was like videos of her brother that really like highlighted the verbal and emotional abuse is very telling. It's very like, you know, some parents, like, maybe they just don't know any better and they're just trying their best. But like, just because a parent doesn't know any better or trying their best doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt. I low-key wish I had video evidence of my abuse, but boy, would that make me spiral looking at it. Yeah. Uh, yeah, especially if the person who abused you is like totally unapologetic. Um, like the spiral would be immense. It would be immense. Like I don't have the home videos from when I was a kid. I don't have them in my possession. But I do, you know what, I am going to talk about this because I think that it's not super damning, but there was a video of like a home video that was like centered around my brothers where I'm like having a temper tantrum in the background, and like I'm having a meltdown. Like I'm probably 3 or 4 and I'm having a complete and total meltdown. And my brothers are being filmed. And instead of like taking a minute to try to soothe me and understand like why I'm having a meltdown, it was, oh yeah, just have a tantrum, cry a little harder. It was just like complete invalidation of the feelings that the big feelings that I was having as a child. And on top of that, I happened to be watching this home video with one of the parents that was involved in the making of this home video, who then turned to me watching this video and said, "Wow, you were such a brat. Why were you such a brat?" And like I was 3 or 4. I was obviously having some big emotions, and I didn't know how to effectively express those emotions. And I was having some sort of a tantrum, some sort of a meltdown. And then to like have watched this home video with one of the people who filmed this home video, and then that person turned to me and validate me again as an adult and call that child that we're watching a brat to the adult that was that child is so... I think about that moment a lot. I think about that moment so often, of just, you look at that child having some sort of a meltdown on video. You're filming it. You're filming this meltdown because you were filming the boys, and then, you know, I'm in the background melting down, and then, you know, you're dismissing that child, you're invalidating that child, and then, you know, you're continuing to film that home video, and then, you know, 28 years later, you know, well, I guess probably 25 years later, 25 years later, you're sitting next to that child as an adult, and then just turn to them and go, wow, you were a brat. Why were you such a brat? Like, that stung. That stung. And I do think about that quite often. And again, I don't want to speak ill of anybody. I don't want to incur any wrath from anybody who I grew up with, because I do know that they watch my content, and I don't want to ruffle any feathers. But that is a moment that I think about a lot. That is something that I have thought about so often in the last couple years, of just like, how do you watch that video with the adult version of that child and turn to that child and go, why are you such a brat? You're such a brat. Like, yeah. So yeah, I'm not going to say who it was. I'm not going to point fingers. I am not going to ruffle feathers, but yeah, that is something that I think about often. So yeah, to continue on with Carol, Pete Walker writes, Carol's parents started in on her early by disdainfully blaming her for soiling her diaper before she was even 1. By the time she was 3, she had been so frequently punished for making noise while talking and playfully exploring her house that her constant state of fear generated an ADHD-like condition in her. Carol's large backyard was her refuge, where she would play with great gusto, climbing, running, cavorting, and building and ransacking villages that she made with her toys and leaves, grass, sticks, and stones. She would busy herself from breakfast until supper, often forgetting to come in for lunch, which she thought, in retrospect, made life even easier for her mother, who never called her in to eat. So this is a child who would eat breakfast and then would not eat again until dinner, because her mother would not call her in when it was lunchtime. One family video from the time was the straw that broke the camel's back for Carol's denial that her family was abusive. It showed her playing a game whereby she would repeatedly smack herself hard on the hand and call herself a bad girl, as she wobbled around the living room touching various knickknacks. There was a considerable amount of footage that showed her parents and siblings roaring with mocking delight in the background. So there's this video of Carol, like, walking around, touching things in the house, slapping her hand, and going, bad girl, bad girl. So she's tottering around, touching things that she knows that she shouldn't, smacking her hand and going, bad girl. And everybody in the family isn't saying to stop this, that this is not good behavior. They're laughing and giggling, and they think that this is funny. When contempt replaces the milk of human kindness at an early age, the child feels humiliated and overwhelmed. Too helpless to protest or even understand the unfairness of being abused, the child eventually becomes convinced that she is defective and fatally flawed, frequently she comes to believe that she deserves her parents' persecution. So like I was talking about earlier, it's that like cycle where you believe that you deserve it after a while. Like you believe that it's your fault that your parents or your people in your life who were people of influence or your peers they persecuted you for a reason. They did this to you for a reason, and it's because you're bad. When Carol was 4, she accidentally fell out of a second-story window. A few years later, she stepped out into the street in front of a car and was knocked to the ground. As an adult, she was convinced that both injuries contributed to her extremely painful early onset scoliosis. She also believed that she was in so much pain that she was unconsciously trying to end her life. So, like, even as a child, she was in so much pain that she like unconsciously was trying to end things. Uh, Fortunately for Carol, school eventually offered a glimmer of reprieve. A kindly third grade teacher perceived her intelligence and praised her enough that she soon became an excellent student. Unfortunately, the terrible anxiety that she lived with 24/7 soon morphed into an obsessive compulsive approach to schoolwork. This, in turn, later manifested into a life-spoiling perfectionism and workaholism. Carol's older brother Bob, the favorite and hero of her parents, was not molded with fear and rejection like Carol. Bob, the recipient of the parents' narcissistic expectations, was shaped into a multidimensional achiever by their withdrawal of approval for less than perfect performance. He was then given tidbits of praise for outstanding accomplishments that would reflect positively on his parents. He was also enlisted to further scapegoat Carol as time went on. As time went on, he outdid his parents in tormenting her. So this is a situation where the parents have starved one child of attention to give all of the attention to another child, and then like have such high expectations for the other child that they put the other child in a position to abuse their sibling in the same way that they're abusing the sibling in order to gain attention and affection from the parent. So, in order to gain some bit of praise, even though this child's like the golden child, they're the one that is like, you know, the angel baby. They're still not like they're just getting like breadcrumbs of uh praise, and then at some point this child realizes that if he's as harsh to his sister as his parents are, then he can gain more praise and more respect from his parents. So it's like this internal system of like teaching the child to be their own siblings bully to further scapegoat the other child. Pete Walker writes, I believe there is an epidemic of sibling abuse that afflicts many dysfunctional families. Siblings in such families can traumatize the victim scapegoat as severely as the parents. In families with checked out, disinterested parents, they can in fact be the chief source of trauma. This is especially true in our culture where emotional neglect of children is rampant and where parents are routinely advised to let the kids work it out themselves. But how does a child who has half the strength of his older sibling work it out and stop him from tormenting her without the aid of a stronger ally? Bob himself did not escape the pathological influence of his parents. Scapegoating became a habit for him, and he developed the narcissistic sixth sense for identifying others whose families had victimized and used them as targets. Bob, hurting from his parents using him and holding him in perfectionistic standards, grew up to become a full fledged narcissist and control freak. He aggressively tried to mold his loved ones as he had been molded and was working on whipping his fourth wife into shape at the time of Carol's therapy. So, like, even being like the perfect child, the angel child, doesn't excuse that. Like, there's nothing that like saves that child, because then that child ends up becoming a narcissist and ends up on marriage number 4. Uh, so then Pete writes, let us return to Carol. As an adolescent, her trauma was painfully reinforced by her surrounding community, who so admired her brother's accomplishments that they joined the family in pathologizing Carol as a bad seed. So not only is she getting it from her parents, but she's also getting it from her community, who see her the way she's acting out, um, because of what she's gone through, um, as her being a bad seed. And like her brother's the golden child, she's the bad seed. So she's not only getting it from her parents now, but now she's also getting it from the community. Pete writes, unfortunately, things deteriorate further for Carol as an adult. Even though she had seemingly escaped from the family, Carol remained symbolically enthralled to the family by getting ensnared with narcissistic people who were just as abusive and neglectful as her parents. This allows pathological phenomena. This well-known pathological phenomenon is called repetitive conclusion or reenactment. The trauma survivors are extremely susceptible to it. We will explore this extensively throughout the book. So, this is where you see, like, traumatized children growing up and then, like, getting into abusive relationships. Because it feels normal. It feels like it feels like home, because like that's what they grew up with as kids. So like they're like reenacting the abuse that they dealt with as children in finding these partners, that are going to do the same things to them that their peers and their parents and their siblings and their community did to them. Pete then writes, a third child, Maud, was born 2 years after Carol. By this time, her parents were worn out from incessantly molding Bob and Carol. Having whipped Bob and Carol into hero and scapegoat shape, they had little use for Maud. They did not have enough energy to insert energy or interest left. Woo, wow. Dyslexia really kicking in there for a second. They did not have enough energy or interest left to whip her into anything. Maud became the classic lost child and was left on her own to raise herself. She soon discovered food and daydreaming as her sole sources of comfort. However, because Bob also enjoyed using her for target practice, she stayed in her room as much as possible. In retrospect, Carol also thought that Bob was molesting Maud. She hypothesized that these two factors contributed to the fact that Maud could not tolerate the various nurseries and preschools in which her mother tried to dump her. One time, Maud numbed out into a low-grade dissociative depression and felt extremely anxious and avoidant whenever she was in a social situation. At 4, an insurrectic, eccentric. Woo! Wow, dyslexia really kicking in. Woo. At 4, an eccentric aunt gave Maud a television for her room, and she was soon entranced. She was forced to develop an attachment disorder in which she bonded with TV rather than with a human being. Sadly, she is still lost in that relationship, living on disability in an apartment cluttered with an enormous amount of useless, hoarded materials. So, we've covered 3 of the 4 children at this point, and the third child was just so neglected and so lost that she developed an attachment disorder and now has nothing, like, trauma hoarding. Like, now she's trauma hoarding. Now she's like, I must have all of these things that, like, aren't really significant. They don't really matter, but it's the only connection she has because she developed an attachment disorder surrounding the TV. Which is really, really sad. So, trying to fill the void with anything we can get a hand on. Exactly. Just try, like, if I get that thing, I'll feel better. But then you only feel better for a little while, and then you're like, okay, well, then I need to get another thing, and it's like this vicious cycle of consumerism that you keep on getting these things in hope that something will fill the void, and you feel better for a little while, but it doesn't actually fill that void. So it's just this, like, diminishing return. Spoiler, nothing fills the void. Yeah. Sucks. It sucks. But we are going to learn how to grieve in later chapters, and we're going to learn how to get better and thrive in later chapters. And a lot of that has to do with verbal ventilation. It has to do with crying. It has to do with angering. It has to do with putting the onus on the proper recipients. So we're learning a lot. Like, I learned a lot in this book, and so we'll, as we continue on, there's gonna be a lot to go over. And you may never be able to fill the void, but you might be able to make the void quieter. So next, Pete Walker writes about poor parenting creates pathological sibling rivalry. And then we're gonna that'll bring us into the fourth brother, which is Sean. So poor parenting creates pathological sibling rivalry. My gosh. Like many children in CPTSD endangering families, Maud cannot turn to her siblings for comfort because her parents unconsciously practiced the divide and conquer principle. Tongue twisted, yeah. So there's this whole thing, like the fact that these parents unconsciously, like, this is not a conscious decision, unconsciously practiced the divide and conquer principle. Her parents modeled and encouraged sarcasm and constant fault finding among the children. So sarcasm is like a huge red flag, because you're teaching kids to say awful things, um, and it be like a joke, right? So this sarcasm, uh, leads to like the constant fault finding, and is just this huge red flag. Moreover, interactions of cooperation or warmth were routinely ridiculed. So this is like, if you're if you're dealing with somebody who's extremely sarcastic, they're encouraging sarcasm, and then you like genuinely are being like kind to your sibling, then that parent might be like, "Aw, yuck." You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like that discouraging, like unconsciously discouraging the siblings from getting close. I never saw the sarcasm of my family in that way. Yeah. Like, and there's healthy sarcasm. There is healthy sarcasm. However, there's a lot of sarcasm that is just like a way to say awful things and then be like, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. It's fine. It's just a joke. You can't take a joke? I'm just being sarcastic. It's fine. So there is that. There is that. Like there is a healthy level of sarcasm and there's like a healthy level of joking. But there is also an unhealthy level of sarcasm and an unhealthy level of joking where it becomes cruel and it's not about empowerment, or it's not about irony. It's all about like actually in like injuring people, and like hiding it behind sarcasm or jokes. And then you're just too sensitive if it upsets you. And you just need to get a thicker skin if it upsets you. So it's again like that tool of like invalidating and devaluing somebody's feelings. So again, there's healthy levels of it. There really is. But in a dynamic like this, it's not healthy levels. It's all of the time, or a good majority of the time. Sibling rivalry. Pete writes, sibling rivalry is further reinforced in dysfunctional families by the fact that all the children are subsisting on minimal nutrients. Minimal nutrients, and therefore without resources to give to each other. Moreover, competition for the little their parents have to give creates even fiercer rivalries. So like when your parents' time is very finite, when their emotional bandwidth is very finite, when their when your food source is very finite, it allows for rivalry to end up happening to try to gain that food, gain that attention, gain that time, that connection. Pete writes, 2 years later, Sean was born. At first, it seemed as if he was destined for the same lost, disassociated destiny of Maud, but as he matured, he fell into the role of gifted child, as described by Alice Miller in The Drama of the Gifted Child. Sean's inborn gift coming into life was his compassion and his sense that he could provide for her needs. Oh, wait. I missed a... Okay. Sean's inborn gift coming into this life was his compassion and his sense that if he studied his mother enough and figured out what she needed, he could provide for her needs. This would sometimes calm her down and make her less dangerous, bitter, and sarcastic. Over the years, Sean honed this skill and could almost clairvoyantly anticipate her sore spots. mood, and preferences. Sometimes it seemed he knew what she needed before she did, and with practice he became adept at diffusing her anger and sometimes even gaining morsels of her approval. Synchronistically, his mother realized she was getting old and that her alcohol ravaged husband would likely precede her. Not wanting to be alone, she exploited his compassionate nature and primed him for domestic service for as long as she would need it. Sean remained living at home until his mother's death released him from emotional captivity at the age of 29. This was the codependent enslavement that was explored more in Chapter 7. A friend of Sean, who knew all the siblings as adults, marveled that it seemed as if each had different parents. Finally, it is also important to note that the scapegoat role does not fall exclusively on the flight type as it did for Carol. It can be bestowed on any one of the 4F types depending on the given family. The scapegoat role can also shift over time from one person to another, and each parent or sibling may choose a different scapegoat. Chapters 6 and 7 explore each of the 4Fs and their corresponding defensive structures in greater detail. These chapters will also help you determine your key 4F defense and help you address issues that are more specific to your type of CPTSD. And that is the end of chapter 1. So, in the last example, Sean, he, like, his mother saw that he could use his kindness and his compassion, and she molded him into being what she needed from him. And parents like that, in a dynamic like that, where the child becomes the gifted child, not only, like, there's going to be two things that will release the gifted child from the servitude of the parent. It will either be that the parent decides that they are no longer worth having them around, that they've become too much to deal with, or the parent passes away. In either case, the gifted child then has to deal with the fact that they were used because they were compassionate, because they were trying to do the right thing. And again, like, there's only two ways out when you're the gifted child. Either the parent decides to release you because you've now become too much for them to handle. You know, you've become too much of a burden. Because you've decided to stand up for yourself or speak up for yourself, and now it's too much to try to squash anymore. Or again, they pass on, and then the child is released. So, being the gifted child, and, like, if you're the gifted child who also has ended up being the scapegoat for any bit of time, it's like that extra, like, wallop. And yeah, so it's we got a lot going on here. There's so much. Like, we're 3.5 hours into this, and we are just done with the first chapter, which is, 20 pages. 19 pages. So, yeah. It's a lot. And it's all just so insidious that these parents, the parents in this scenario, like, they had these children, and instead of wanting them to be independent and be their own people and, you know, have good lives, they very much so molded them into whatever was most convenient for them. Whether that be, again, the perfectionism, the scapegoat, the perfectionism of the hero child, the scapegoat, the the lost child or the gifted child, like to put those children, you know, to carry a baby, have that baby, hold that baby in your arms, and go, you know, yeah, I'm going to mold this child into whatever I need. Uh, and again, obviously, this is a subconscious thing. Like, it's not like a conscious thought of, I'm going to mold this child into what I need. But the fact that they go through with it and they do it really is just disgusting. Like, it's disgusting. It's gross. Like, if you add the added layer of, like, I know a lot of the people that are millennials, and Gen X, you know, a lot of our parents age range, had kids specifically because they wanted to, like, get it out of the way and then be able to, like, still be young enough to travel, or they wanted to like, uh, have somebody who felt obligated to take care of them in their old age. So there's this, like, idea, this, like, cultural idea of, like, you're going to have children, and you should either do it while you're super young so that way you can enjoy retirement, or you should have children to take care of you when you get old, or both. Like, there's that, like, and like, for your child to be your retirement plan, just, it feels disgusting to me. I don't get it. I don't understand. I don't know if it's because I'm somebody who is child free and I will remain child free, that I just, I can't fathom it. I can't fathom it. Um, you know, I spent a lot of my life thinking that, like, if I ever had kids, I'd want to adopt, and now I'm at a place in my life where I'm like, I'm never gonna be able to adopt, and honestly, that's probably for the best, because I don't think that I could handle, like, I don't think I could handle it. I can't handle the idea that, like, there's so many parents out here who are just, like, using their children as some sort of retirement plan. I don't get it. I mean, obviously, you know, millennials and Gen Z, like, they're taking a different approach to things. They're either, you know, trying to be more understanding parents, or, you know, they're becoming child free. You know, they're having the procedures to make sure that they are child free. Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's just, this is a great book. Um, you should get it. Um, I think that we will go over chapter 2 uh, later, because chapter 2's kind of lengthy. Yeah, it's like 26 pages. So I think that we will go over chapter 2 next time. But yeah, that is, going over chapter 1 and discussing chapter 1 of complex PTSD from surviving to thriving. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And just like the fact that the first 19 pages, we went over the first 19 pages and we're, 3.5 hours in. That's just how much information there is and how good this book is, that it's go get it, go read it, okay? Do the things. But yeah. I guess we will raid out. Because I think it's probably that time. I'm starting to get a little hungry. I should eat something. But thank you all so much for joining me. We're gonna see who we can raid. I will be posting this on YouTube, so please feel free to, if you didn't catch the whole thing, please feel free to, as always, a pleasure. Oh, thanks, Pavlov. Oh no! Oh no, none of our normal people are on. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you. Oh no, none of our normal people are on today. What is going on? I don't know. When is Goblin going live? Do we know when Goblin's going live? Because they might be going live soon. Let me see. Yeah. Well, I don't know when Goblin's going live. I know they said that they were going to go live at some point today, but I don't know when. Because if they're going to go live at 6, we've only got 10 more minutes, so we could just keep discussing for a little while longer. But I don't know what time they were thinking about doing the things. So we might do, we might go see somebody that we don't normally see. Like I said, none of our normal people are streaming right now. So we can either, let's see, do we have anybody in the same category? No. Whoop. Let's see, who can we, okay, we can see, wait, okay, same category. Let's see, I don't know this person. We can see somebody that I just don't know at all, or we can see decisions. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm so bad with decisions. So Vanora is playing Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly. J1 Piercer is playing Overcooked. Or we could find somebody in the same category. So, like, Mermaid's Logic is chatting. I don't know. I don't know who. Oh. Oop. Oh. Oh. Let's see. Oop. Okay. Oh, wait. No. Okay, I lost Mermaid's Logic. Okay. So we're not doing Mermaid's Logic. Alright. Let's do Venora. Venora's fun. They're very high energy, which is probably good. A good place for us to go. So, grab your. Let's see if I can get the raid messages. Grab your raid messages, everybody. The first one is, you know, for our lovely subscribers. With the emoji with the knife. The second one is for our friends who just come in to chat with the hearts. And guard your loins. It is a raid time. It's raid time. Have fun. Thank you all so much for being here. Bye-bye. Maybe? Are you gonna let me raid? Why isn't it letting me raid? Come on. Why isn't it letting me raid? Oh no. Did I mess up? Why isn't it raiding? Oh no. Why isn't it letting me raid? What did I do? Try again? Maybe? Why is it taking so long? I don't know what's going on, guys. I'm sorry. Technical difficulties. Do. I don't know what's going on, guys. If it does not go through soon, I will try somebody else. But for some reason usually gives me like the countdown. And it's not giving me a countdown. So I don't know what's going on. Okay, let's try someone else. Alright. Do. We're gonna try this again, maybe? Oop, possibly. Okay. Alright, we're gonna try again and see if it does the thing. Maybe. I don't know, maybe they just don't have... Okay, let's try... Is it gonna let me do this one? Ha ha! Okay, I guess the other one was just not gonna let me raid. Hi, Raven! You missed it! We're just about to raid! Oh my goodness, hi! Thank you for being here for the split second that you were here. I'm so sorry. We're raiding. I love you. Thank you so much for being here. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for coming in and stopping by and chatting with me.